Here, ma'am. Appreciate you thinking about CCRC. That's good. I just didn't text it. I wanted to talk to you. Damn. Go. Carl's slapping his desk too now. Carl's ready to go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the October 29th Health and Ed Committee. Begin by calling the roll.
Commissioner Oliver.
Present.
Commissioner Davidson. Here. Commissioner Wilson.
Here.
Commissioner Boyd.
Here.
Commissioner McMurray.
Here.
Commissioner Gooch.
Present.
Chairman Dodd.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, Vice Chair Wilson, the minutes, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I have reviewed the minutes from our last meeting. There was a slight revision today. You may have noticed if you read the minutes before, they were revised, and that is a statement made by Dr. Sullivan that we're working on a contract to purchase land beside Stewart's Creek High School. It was in the minutes, it was for a middle school. Our discussion was it being for a high school, so that was the correction in the revised minutes that you got this afternoon. And with those changes, I move for their approval.
With a proper motion second, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Do we have any public comments? We will move on to Director Cumby and the Health Department report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, your health department does continue to do good work for the people of Rutherford County, and we're indeed proud to serve. You should have our September outreach report there available to you electronically. As we protect in that first column in the green with our disease intervention, immunizations, environmental inspections, in the center we'll promote with our health outreach, diabetes outreach, community participation, and vital records. In the last column, we improve with our primary care services, our dental, and WIC family planning. And of note to us this month is in dental, we beat our record. We had, 92 patients seen in September, and that's a record for us. That averages 7.1 a day, which is humming right along for a dental practice. And so I'm very proud of our dental team. They're kind of fulfilling that goal of the governor to expand dental health to as many people as are eligible. So I'll remind folks that we can see in our dental clinic in Murfreesboro, we can see any uninsured child or adult or anyone with TennCare or Cover Kids insurance as well. So don't hesitate to call us there in Murfreesboro to arrange an appointment. As we move to respiratory viruses, COVID-19 fortunately is low according to the CDC's hospital admission metric. Early indicators and severity indicators nationwide and in Tennessee, Rutherford County as well, continue to be low as we experience that lull between the summer and winter kind of rises that we've seen. The new COVID vaccine is available. They're expected to perform well against the latest variants. Recommendations are anyone 6 months or older be vaccinated to prevent severe illness, particularly those 65 or older or the immune compromised. If you were recently infected, maybe during that summer rise that we had, you can wait 4 to 6 months from the time you were infected to get a new vaccine. If you have not been recently infected or vaccinated, then October or November is optimal to protect yourself all the way through the next winter, the expected winter rise there. New COVID shots are available widely in pharmacies and in doctor's offices and in our clinics by appointment Monday through Friday. Call 615-898-7880. We can get you scheduled in. COVID tests by mail. These are the free test kits provided by the federal government to any household in the United States. That is back underway, so we encourage you to visit the web address covidtests.gov, that's test with an S, .gov to request 4 free COVID tests for this winter. Go ahead and order those before you need them. There's also a phone number. It is 1-800-232-0233. That's 800-232-0233. Moving on to flu. Flu and influenza-like activity is low statewide with the exception of the Northeast region, which is in the moderate range, so that's still considered low. The new fall flu shots have arrived at our health departments, are available. We do accept insurance for those, or for the uninsured, we charge on a sliding fee scale based on declared income. The CDC does say that a flu vaccine that's well matched to circulating viruses can reduce the likelihood of becoming sick enough to require a doctor's visit by up to 60%. Flu shots are available as a walk-in service in our clinics from 8 to 10 or 1 to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday in Smyrna or Murfreesboro. Other updates, naloxone or Narcan is now available free of charge at our health department and at all health departments in Tennessee. Anyone can go to the health department and request it. They'll be provided with an overdose reversal kit and instructions at no cost with no questions asked. It is very easy to administer. There's nothing to assemble or to measure. It's very much like a nasal spray. We encourage folks to have people they're concerned about in their life to go ahead and have that at the ready. Recent events, October 15th was the Department of Health statewide Fight Flu event. And that day's event included free flu shots at our Murfreesboro and Smyrna clinics. And we were also out at the Kittrell Public Health and Safety Building. We gave out 153 flu shots that day in our county, 847 in our Mid-Cumberland region, and statewide more than 7,000 vaccines, which was the highest total since 2019. Also on October 15th, you may recall we talked about this, our annual Coats for Kids campaign, and there's no other way to characterize that than a solid success. We gave away over 400 children's coats in 4 hours. This event was envisioned last year by our CHANT program. That's our Community Health and Navigators, Access and Navigators in Tennessee. Those are our social workers there at the health department, and they recognized a need in the community to help outfit families for the winter. Outfitting a family of growing children can quickly get into hundreds of dollars, and that can be a challenge for many families. So we asked for help from the community, and the community responded. We got donations from our staff, private parties, churches, and back in May, some of our schools donated what was left unclaimed in their lost and found. Our CHANT team cleaned up everything that was previously used, applied new name labels inside and hung them up by size. We made those coats available to parents, guardians, grandparents, whoever, to pick up with or without the child present. And this event also gave us an opportunity to share information about our services that we provide for adults and children. And I just wanted to give you a few vignettes from that day. The St. Clair Senior Center, downtown Murfreesboro, donated to the cause 250 hand-knitted beanies or toboggans, and each of them was one of a kind, and we gave every single one of those away. We had a young child that saw a coat across the room and yelled, "Spider-Man!" And like that jacket was there waiting for him, and he sported it proudly all the way out the door, despite his parents trying to get him to try on something else. That day was the first cold snap we had, and if y'all remember, it was like 60 degrees and windy, and that was a good thing, because if it had been 85 like recently, people might have said, "Get those coats away from me." But we had a line out the door, and some of the people were shivering when they came in, so we actually got to see that need fulfilled in the moment. Some of our staff who donated got to see coats that their children had worn and outgrown. Maybe they had a special attachment to. They went directly to another child who really needed it. And finally, we had a school teacher come in and ask for a couple of coats for some of her students that she was concerned would not have the means to get those on their own. And I think that just says so much about the level of compassion that we have in our teachers and their involvement in their students' well-being that goes beyond the classroom. So I did want to mention that to you. And closing up here on Monday, September 30th, Rutherford County Public Health nurse Christy Williams joined 5 other nurses from our Mid-Cumberland region strike team, and they deployed to East Tennessee to render aid and service to those that were devastated by the floods from Hurricane Helene. They were there for 1 week and helped with disease prevention, safety guidance, mental health support, community education on health risks, hygiene, safe practices, The nurses strike team aided in the delivery and administration of over 1,000 tetanus, hepatitis, and flu vaccines to that area. And just finishing up, Fight Flu and Coats for Kids, those are kind of our last two big events for the year. Of course, our health educators will continue to do outreach work in the community, and we'll begin next month preparing for our community baby shower next year. But in the coming months, we'll have a few more administrative things on the agenda for you, and I just want to put those on your radar. We have the annual co-op agreement between the county and the state, and the county finance department is reviewing that for us now, and then we'll present that to you. We have a memorandum of understanding that the Department of Health Commissioner's Office has requested to be signed between the state and the county to confirm the ARP funding that has already been approved. And they just want to make sure that's still obligated as projects move forward and those funds don't revert back to the federal government. And finally, we have a contract with an outfit called Siricom. It is for a virtual language interpreter service. And this is something that's already being used by our county courts here. Our state contract that we have from the Tennessee Department of Health has budgeted funds to pay for this service, but that contract does need approval from the county level, so we'll present that to you as well. And with that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Commissioner Davidson.
If this microphone works. I keep seeing a lot of ads on social media and things about shingles. Do you do shingles vaccinations?
We do not do shingles at the health department, but we do recommend those. I believe it's still for 65 and older, but that may be some of those recommendations that they're looking at lowering those. And if you ever know someone who has had shingles and how painful that can be, that's something you do want to avoid if you can. I had mine last year. Actually, it's 50 and over because I had mine last year. So, yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Yeah, great. It's a 2 series, right? That's what, you know.
Commissioner McMurray.
Yes, sir, Director. I have a quick question. Have you all seen a surge in cases of mycoplasma, as known as the walking pneumonia, amongst the young children? I know it's this type of season, it's starting to surge. So I didn't know if you all have seen that or.
We have not yet, but that's something we'll definitely look out for. That would be concerning if we do see a rise in that.
Gotcha. Perfect. Thank you. And then lastly, I just want to put out there that next month, November, is Diabetes Awareness Month. So as someone who's a diabetic, I always try to encourage those to stay checked, keep your A1C in check, and try to eat as healthy as possible. I know it's the holidays, but try it out. And Lord, don't bring me any more cookies.
Good advice. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Commissioner.
I have a question. Do you know of any free mammogram services that the health department has or anywhere? That question came to me, and I know there's, if I recall, there was a truck or a van or
Ascension,
something.
yes, Commissioner Oliver. Ascension St. Thomas does have a mammogram bus that is making rounds throughout the Mid-Cumberland region, and we hosted them in September. I'd be glad to check on their scheduling to see if they have that anywhere nearby, but someone could probably call Ascension St. Thomas, ask about their mammogram bus, and see if they're scheduled in a nearby county, because that is open to anyone. Thank you for the question.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the report.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Director.
Thank you, Chairman.
Next on our agenda is community care, and the minutes are published and on SharePoint. And I'll just ask Chairman Phillips anything to add on that item. We will move on. I know that in the near future I know Commissioner Oliver suggested that this need to go to property management. Chairman Phillips was, at some point, we'll discuss that with steering. So that just is on our horizon to make sure we've got CCR at the right place.
A follow-up, just the discussion that's been had. A member of this committee has been a member of the CCR board for years and years and years, and that communication linked was important. So we'll have that discussion next August as we make committee assignments to see if it's important enough for us to require the board member that's a commissioner be assigned to this board, I think, to this commission, this committee. I think it would be important that that happen, but we'll have that discussion next year.
Great, thank you, Chairman. That leads to our next item. We have the school board director, Dr. Sullivan, and Dr. Sullivan will join us, and the director of finance for the school board. And y'all, we're going to change up the agenda bullets just a little bit. We're going to do enrollment update, current 5-year plan. We've got 5 questions on the SharePoint under school board, and in the school board tab under board update on your SharePoint are the 5 questions. Chairman Craig Harris added a 6th question about requests for proposals. It's not on the SharePoint, it just came in. I forwarded it to Dr. Sullivan and Chair Claire Maxwell, so they will answer that question as well. We will follow the Q&A with budget amendments, and that will wrap up their report. And I will make a comment before Claire joins us for the Q&A portion. And Dr. Sullivan, so you've got enrollment and the 5-year plan, I believe, is great.
Evening, Commissioners. So quick enrollment analysis. Our district as of yesterday was at 52,120 students. That does include Springs and Power, which is one of our 2 charter schools. It does not include American Classical. They're at about 220 to 225, somewhere in there. So we're looking right about 52,340, 350, depending on what American Classical's enrollment. So tonight we are going to talk about Laverne High School's addition. So I want to give you the North End High School enrollment. Laverne High School is at 2,127. Our capacity in that building, and I'll get into that in a little while, but we had a third-party vendor through an 18-month process determine building analysis, building utilization. The capacity for Laverne High School, according to RSP, was 2,015, so we're over capacity. The largest high school in Rutherford County is Stewart's Creek High School. They're at 2,480 students, and then Smyrna High School is at 2,269. To give you an idea of how close our enrollment analysis from last year was, I went to Blackman Middle School today for an observation. They anticipated Blackman Middle School being at 1714 to start the school year, and Blackman Middle School started the school year at 1716. And so it was pretty amazing a year out that they could be that close on analysis. We'll have an additional analysis in January for our enrollment trends for the last 13, 14 months since then. And so that is our enrollment analysis. Any questions on where we are as a school system with total number of students? All right, next we move into our 5-year plan. Our 5-year plan has not changed a whole bunch in the last 2 years, and we've talked about for the last 2 years, it really shouldn't change a whole bunch. We should have a master plan of where we're going, and the only thing that should change is maybe timelines a little bit based on approval, and then adding additional years. And so our 5-year plan last year included the Beatty Elementary project. And I'm speaking on last year's 5-year plan because technically the school board has not approved another 5-year plan. We approve our 5-year plan usually November or December. So the only thing I can speak to is what the school board has actually approved. We approved, or in the county commission funded Beatty Elementary. We have funded the design for the Beatty Middle School project. And then you will see Laverne High School. I think our target was for July or August to send out for proposals and to get funded, and of course we're now in October. So we're only a couple months behind what our initial timeline was, and that should not impact us a whole lot in opening Laverne High School's addition for the 26, December of 26, somewhere kind of like what we're doing with Smyrna High School right now. The next part of the 5-year plan, and we have discussed this kind of ad nauseum over the last couple months and really years, is that the middle school for the Beatty project, that will go to, bids will be received on March 20th. We anticipate coming and asking Health and Ed for that next Health and Education meeting in March, to full commission, hopeful approval in April. The next one in line right behind that is hopefully we will have land for a high school by that point, so that we can look for the high school funding, but that'll be part of our 25-26 budget request. And so everything is still right in line with where we have been, so that we, as this year's, we talked about as last year's budget process, the middle school and Laverne High School addition. So that is kind of where we are at our 5-year plan. The next step after that runs into what is growing quicker, because we realize a high school is a huge, huge ask. We try to offset a high school if we can between a year, because it takes 2 years to build, between asking for another school and just focusing on renovations during that year in between. And so the next step after that, you're getting to the 28-29 school year on our 5-year plan, says Plainview/Christiana or Walter Hill. And it depends on which area of growth, which part of the planning area grows quicker between them. And that, any questions on our 5-year plan?
Commissioner Wilson, the 5-year plan, in your recollection, 2 years ago, we were kind of looking at these projects that have come to fruition in this year's plan. And so, and then in my years prior to that, with Trey and Jeff and some of the folks who've been here a couple of terms, I've seen the 5-year plan evolve, priorities change, but it's been a pretty darn accurate tool. And I just asked you, Phil, I think you agree in your analysis so far, it's been accurate.
Yes, Chairman. In fact, one of the items of discussion was we have a newly elected board with new members, and one of the questions I had in listening to their work session was, of course, you are not going to review the 5-year plan in a comprehensive form until later this year. However, in the approval of the funding request coming before us tonight, the new members, if they disagreed with this being the next purchase, could have simply brought that up in work session and or turned down to bring this request. So I'm assuming that those steps that have taken place, at least for tonight's ask, I'm going to accept that there is a unity that continued plan, which really began in the previous commission term. This began with a plan, I believe, possibly 4 or more years ago, of actually putting additions on 5 schools at the time, which Laverne and Blackman were both included at the time. So this has been going on for about 4 years. And I know the way we've kind of settled is by priority. We've taken care of Riverdale, Oakland, Smyrna, and now Laverne is coming next. It's something we've been looking at for at least 3 to 4 years. Everybody agrees on that. So I feel confident that the 5-year plan, although has not been discussed by the new board, this is something they're still completely for by their votes in their last meeting. So I concur that it has stayed the same, and we've been the middle school and the high school, same thing. From discussions I've heard, that's the need. Blackman, we have the largest middle school in the state of Tennessee. Is that correct?
Rockville Middle is the second, and that's what it would.
And one of the things that we can, keep in mind as we're debating where to go and what to do is we have many of the most populated high schools in the state of Tennessee now. We have high schools and middle schools all in the top 10. And I don't think that's a number we want to be in the top 10 for, but we keep inching closer. So, as we discuss this moving forward, I think we have to look at catching up to a plan that we really talked about 3 or 4 years ago, and we're still chasing something from even a previous school board and a previous commission term.
Thank you, and we will then therefore this 5-year plan that we've had in this committee, the next 5 years is we can look forward to those coming to some degree of fruition in some relative order that's in front of us now. So I kind of wanted to belabor that. Yes, Jimmy.
I would add, we also had with our new school board, they are the school board that approved the addition for Laverne High School's funding, so that is the body that has approved it. We also had a school board retreat on October 18th to where we reviewed our 5-year plan. Of course, it was a retreat, so there were no actual votes taken, but there was no disagreement on our 5-year plan movement. So Judah, and we have our chairman, Ms. Maxwell, here as well. Would you?
I will say, come together on everything, but this we have. Everybody knows that it's time to move forward, and there has been no obstacles to the 5-year plan. Everybody's on board.
Thank you. And are we going to move on to the next?
Up to you.
I have a little preamble.
Go for it. Yeah.
I don't think we need a motion on the information.
Can I
thus
just
far.
ask a
I see,
quick-
yes, Mr. Gooch.
On the 5-year plan, it just refreshed my memory, land for the north end, is that part of it, and is there any
It is. I
update on
hope
that?
to, we are in negotiations, I would say, with one of the pieces we looked at.
Okay.
It is tied up in a little bit of a family trust, so I hope to know an answer within the next month, whether or not we can move forward with that or punt and do something different.
Hopefully we can.
And any other questions on the 5-year plan? And any given month, we can ask these questions too. That 5-year plan can always be on our agenda if need be.
I
Commissioner
have a
Oliver.
question. You mentioned Walter Hill for the future, but you already have property in that area. Is there a reason why you're putting off if you have land there?
Yeah, great question. So we also have the land at Plainview. And so we have land at both sites to build the next middle or high school. Walter Hill right now, it would require us to zone so much of Smyrna and Laverne all the way out to Walter Hill. I worry about it, one, losing the community feel, and second, just the logistics behind Laverne Middle, Laverne Lake, John Coleman, and all that Smyrna Elementary School area going that far out to Walter Hill. So great question.
So as we move on to the questions, I did just want to acknowledge to these members, I've said it before, but the Rutherford County Board of Education are fellow elected officials. Answer to the same constituents we do, run in the same corridors that we do. And I will also acknowledge again that the Rutherford County Board of Education, I think, does the heavy lifting for 6,000 employees, 52,000 students in 50-plus school buildings. They meet weekly and often more than once a week to dissect all of these large problems. We have the good fortune of being the body that funds their decisions. So I encourage us and our fellow commissioners on other committees to get into relationship with a board member. If it's your elected person or if it's just someone else that you gravitate to or you have their cell number or whatever. So especially, I think all of us here have reached out, but if you are another commissioner on another committee, I think it's safe to say, Claire, that get into a relationship with a board member. I think a lot of information can be garnered from that opportunity. So thank you, board, for the heavy lifting you do. Claire, you are the new chair. Ms. Claire Maxwell is with us tonight. She and I have, in a spirit of deliberation, have agreed to have conversations to make sure that we're sharing agendas, make sure that we're sharing questions from our committees to the board and from the board back. And so Claire agreed to join us tonight and with this first series of questions, of which we have 5 plus 1, so 6 questions. I think it's fair that we can, it's somewhat organic, so if we need clarity during the ask your questions, build on the questions. If Dr. Sullivan or Claire or Brian give answers, you need some details, we'll pause and get your details. I think that's fair to you guys. And so commission, I'm not going to read the questions necessarily. Dr. Sullivan, shall I read them or you?
It's totally up to you.
Okay, so Dr. Sullivan is looking, I can see he's looking at SharePoint. So he has the same 5 questions, and I have the 6th one here that I can hand out when you get to it. So without further ado, we will begin. Yes, Ms.
Comment.
Oliver.
I think because we're recording, someone needs to read the question
Okay,
so the
well,
public can know what's being
Yeah,
answered.
thank you. Then I suggest Dr. Sullivan read them just right off our list. So good get.
Do you mind if just for the audience, I give a quick timeline update of where we've been with this whole high school edition update?
Yes, and let me have a clarifying comment as well. The basis for tonight's questions are high level, I think, number one. And number two, the scope of tonight's questions were brick and mortar, funding, price per square foot, location, which grade level is the school board paying attention to. So it's some other future months we may decide to talk about staff or number of personnel that within the purview of our authority. I mean, so just for the public and our fellow commissioners, tonight is about school construction, cost, and how we make decisions on when and where to put schools. Is that a fair synopsis?
So just to give a quick kind of maybe 5-minute timeline of where we've been. This all started in January of 2022. There was a special called board meeting that the two previous boards ago, that's how long this has been going on, looked at rezoning, and in February/March approved to send to the commission 5 high school additions: Smyrna, Oakland, Riverdale, Laverne, Blackman. At that point, through March and April, the request from the county commission was to prioritize. We've discussed kind of that with this commission body ad nauseum, how that occurred and how I don't feel like we would need to do that again. But that's what was done. The entire process was the board prioritized in March of 22, Riverdale, Smyrna, Oakland, Laverne, then Blackman. We had a commission change, school board change, director of schools change. So October, we go from March to October of 22 without a whole lot of movement. October of 2022, I presented the idea of a complete district rezone. And so that was the first time we started talking about a district rezone to be able to make sure we're utilizing all of our seats. December of 22, we hired the third-party vendor that I mentioned. We started with an enrollment analysis, a building capacity analysis so we could truly see how many seats we had, and then a building utilization. Did we have any spots in our school that we weren't using? February of 2023, our new 5-year plan was presented to Health and Education, having this information. March of 23 and April of 23, we had the request to fund Smyrna High School, Oakland High School, and Riverdale High School. I think the commission, Health and Ed sent all through 3. Budget passed 2. Mr. Gooch made my famous comment at that point of little sad face Jimmy, which has lived in our lived in our central office nonstop since that date. And then on the floor, Smyrna High School was added. April 23, the presentation, the funding requests were approved. Then we got to May of 2023, and our third-party vendor, RSP, gave an enrollment analysis of trends, hot spots, looking for overall growth factors, building permits, a capacity analysis for how big can our schools be, and then the board decided what were some criteria for zoning they wanted to look at. July of 23, I presented that enrollment analysis and building capacity to Health and Education. It is attached to the minutes. I checked it today, and it's attached as part of the presentation to Health and Education for that day. So those have been available. That has not changed. September of 23, we reviewed our rezoning plan and our 5-year plan. The LHS refurbishment was updated because we knew it was about a year or 2 away before we would start that addition. So we started with floors, hallways, a couple other things. The school system and school board went through the arduous task of rezoning the entire district between September and November of 23. The new zones for the elementary and middle school were dependent on the new schools at the Beatty projects. My favorite notes were in November of 23, Health and Education reviewed that rezoning plan, and the way it was summarized in the minutes was followed much discussion. So that must tell me there was a lot of discussion in Health and Ed. That was how it was mentioned. December of 23, we reviewed our 5-year plan again with Health and Education and discussed upcoming Rutherford County Board of Education requests. We had a meeting with the state delegation on our 5-year plan that was at the Chamber of Commerce. January, the approval of $30 million from fund balance to construct Beatty Elementary, and then the rest of the funding from the commission, with some of that discussion at the same time around the need to be able to have allocated funds to be able to fund the addition at Laverne High School. January of 24, the Laverne High School design was approved, reallocating $2.5 million out of Fund 189. April, at Health and Ed and Budget, we presented our budget priorities for 24-25. The LHS edition was mentioned for July of August. Again, we're now in October, so a couple months behind. And the discussion about we'll make a middle school request during this time. July of 24, we discussed requests for a new high school will come next fiscal year, and I still anticipate that being in line. August, the design fees for the new middle school were approved from fund balance for the Beatty property. And then September of 24, Board of Education updated Health and Ed on Laverne High School, Poplar Hill Elementary, Smyrna, Oakland, Riverdale, the Beatty Middle, and the new high school. And so that's just a quick timeline update of kind of where we've been. Seems like not the last 2 years, seems like forever, but it's been about 2.5 years. So, you ready to get to the questions now, I guess?
Yes, unless any comment or question on Jimmy's remarks. Please.
All right, first question, what factors does RCS use to determine school sites? Location, grade bands, growth areas. So a little bit of all three. The first thing in addressing location is we have to have land available. So the two big pieces we have of land available right now are at Walter Hill and Plainview. We have a bigger need on the Laverne and Stewart's Creek side for a new high school. Knowing a new high school is $180 to $200 million. The Laverne High School addition is a fiscally responsible decision that we'll get into a little bit more when we get to that request. We also look at grade bands. I cannot thank the county commission enough, and this is just not me speaking it. Next year, we should not have an overcrowded elementary school. That is huge progress for us collectively as a body. When that first decision or first discussion started in January of 2022, reading the minutes today, Commissioner Rhonda Allen at that time brought up, I understand the high school additions, but what are you going to do about Stewart's Creek and Blackman? And that's where the Beatty project comes in. And so greatly appreciate that. That is a huge celebration for us to have one grade band that is actually where it needs to be. Other parts are where we grow in grade band. As housing has become more expensive in Rutherford County, we are seeing less growth at the elementary level. We are seeing much more growth in the middle and high school areas because more established families with older students are the ones that are moving in. Our enrollment at the K through 5 is actually declining a little bit when you look at birth rates. Kindergarten through 5th grade declines every single year, not by a lot, 20 or 30 students, but that's a teacher classroom, and hopefully we'll be caught up at the elementary level for several years. And then growth areas, yes, we use RSP, which again is our enrollment analysis company we work with. They have a way, not being from the area, to be able to get information in a manner that is not as frightening when we are all working on the same team, but we're all our own different government entities. And so they have identified the Laverne, Stewart's Creek, Blackman, kind of Siegel, and then even down Rockvale. Really the only side not growing is out towards Kittrell. So they give us a plus or minus what the enrollment and growth trend looks like, and I look forward to having my new one in December or January. And happy to understand or ask any questions about that with school sites.
On your 5-year plan discussion, do y'all continue to use your consultant, or do y'all pull the Murfreesboro, Smyrna, and county building permits or subdivision approvals, and does that go into your 5-year?
Pull it for us. RSP gets all the information for us.
Okay.
Yes.
RSP does. So they're pulling those from all the municipalities and the county.
Yeah, and we can as well. We have just found that I've talked with Mayor Carr and some other commissioners as well about shoring up that process between the different municipalities. We have found it's been the easiest to be able to, and Commissioner Wilson about as well, we've still find the most efficient way has been for a third party to be able to compile it all for us.
They on is your consultant under a multi-year contract?
No,
or
it's 1 year,
they do the
one at a time, so we can be done with it at any moment.
Okay. And you would have to follow that some other way. Okay. So factors on determining where schools go. Any thoughts or questions, or we can come back around if you.
I do have a question.
I'll come back to you, Carl.
Understanding this, explain what happened with Church Street. What happened with that property, and why is it not being able to
Nothing's being done to it. Great question. So we are meeting with the city of Murfreesboro constantly, and in being respectful of all municipalities. That was originally put under contract in May of 2023. The floodplains were updated in May of 2023 after we had already put it under contract. And so the floodplains that are currently there require quite a bit of work to be able to make that building to code with the floodplains for students to be in the building. So we are looking at multiple avenues right now between, do we invest that extra funding into that, or do we go and look somewhere else for a different site and maybe move on from that building? Our board ultimately has to make that decision. I don't fault the city of Murfreesboro whatsoever, but that gets in kind of to the next question that we have. We can only go with the codes and things that we know exist. And at the time that we started, you guys know, for a school system, it, as big as us and as big as the commission, it takes a little while for us to get things rolling. And so sometimes codes and things change during that process, and that's what happened here.
I recognize it may take time to get things done, but I'm sure it took time to get those codes reevaluated too. So no one could have given you the heads up or given us the heads up prior to that, knowing that you were looking at getting that building.
I'm hoping
So it's not just,
I'm hoping that relationship is improving.
okay.
And I'll jump in on that too. That very item specifically prompted question number 2.
Yep.
Because it's incumbent upon us to hold the board accountable, to help them find who is the right stakeholder to confirm the due diligence for a certain piece of property. And so 231 kind of was the red flag for me and other fellow commissioners. So I think we're enhancing the process to make sure we get all the stakeholders. It started back actually with the roadway network around Plainview Elementary School, caught our highway department off guard. So we began some years ago, hey, which stakeholders are being left out? And so we're continuing to hone that process. So great question, and we can expound on that in number 2. Mr. Boyd had a question before we.
Yeah, this may be answered in the next question. I didn't look ahead, but when the company that you hired to do the consulting work, if I remember correctly, the hot spots was Laverne, Blackman.
Yeah, it was Stewart's Creek, Smyrna. Yes, sir.
We're looking at one property, and I think it's on Rocky Fork Road.
That's correct.
It's right in the middle of the heart. I mean, it's where it needs to go.
Correct.
What happened with the property on Stewart's Creek Road, which would have satisfied, that area needs it more than the Walter Hill area needs it?
I'm glad you mentioned that. So part of that involved a conversation with Greg Brooks. And so that project needed quite a bit of infrastructure for roads. I would have loved to have had that location, because within 10 years, I have no doubt we're going to need a school there. However, I also didn't feel like it was fair to come and ask, our school board discussed it. It was a split vote. Discussed, do we come and ask for land that we don't need right at this minute, with the realization of how tight money was. We did not have a way to take that amount of money out of fund balance like we've been able to do. So, great question.
And I will, on where schools go and how land's purchased, there's not a listing, there's not a farm out there listed that the school can say, oh, let's pursue a listed piece of property. So the school can't say, we want to be at X, and there's a piece of property there. If there's nothing available, they have to shift around the dial to where property is available. And if they need 100 acres and there's only 250s, now they're negotiating with 2 people. So they have to go where somebody is willing to negotiate in the right quadrant to meet the need. So it's a complicated process. So any realtors out there, if you have land, get it listed, bring it to us. We'll look at it. Number 2.
Yep. So what is the process that RCS undergoes to ensure due diligence with impacted stakeholders when looking at school sites and impact on the community? First one involves municipalities. I'm not going to go into too big of detail. No, there's always I'll say a friendly disagreement on who supersedes who. As a county entity, we are looking for state approval. When you are involving municipalities, it's always that extra question of what do we do within the city limits of different areas. Some of our board, and myself included, not a member of the board, but just included, feel like we are the county entity, we report to the State Department. We are working with our municipalities to try to address some of those in an effort of good faith. That would address kind of the situation we talked about with 214 South Church Street. Fire codes are a good one. So when we have our annual fire inspections, we are state inspected. We report to the state for fire inspections. We have county schools in 4 municipalities and the county overall. We want consistency in messaging and the same people inspecting our buildings. There's discussion from one municipality of we want to do your fire inspections because we're an extension of the State Department. That very well may be true as an extension of the State Department, but we are directly from the State Department. And so, again, I don't want to go too far off on that, but there are conversations we have with our municipalities. They could always probably increase, and I think that increase could go both ways. But at the end of the day, my job and my duty is to the county school system and county government, not to municipalities. And I shared that with Commissioner Dodd and Commissioner Wilson. Just on phone conversation is that I'm partial and I understand that, but that's what my job is. Second part involves roadway network. So roadways, and I want to be, I know I'm saying be careful, but I want to be careful as well. The school system does not bring in developments. The school system does not bring in the needed roadway for developments. We realize that when we build a school, that does have an impact on the community, especially during those target times of arrival and dismissal. However, we aren't in the road building business. Until the debacle that happened with Plainview, and I'm not even sure that was a debacle as much as a county school system didn't discuss those things because they'd never been necessarily discussed before. We also run into, and you guys are very well aware of this, the county has the biggest budget, so let's see where we can pay from. And a lot of times the county gets involved with that. I'm thankful Greg Brooks has worked with us on the Beatty projects. I'm grateful for his work on those. But I also am a firm believer that we can be aware and understand and be cognizant of those extra costs for infrastructure, but we're not in the infrastructure business. We're in the building schools and educating kids business. Any questions on that part? Because I know that part was one that had a lot of conversation.
Roadway specifically, you mean? I will say that I placed this on the agenda not to suggest that the school board is responsible for building roads, but I do think that there's room for dialogue between the school board and the highway, and the school board and the cities. That's the arena that we're trying to enhance and improve. The dilemma is the school board answers to the state inspectors, not the cities. So they don't want to double up on inspections. They don't want to double up on payment of inspections and permits. So there's pre-construction efforts that I'm trying to enhance and that the school board has been willing to open their due diligence toward that. And then there's post-purchase layers of government that the school board needs to avoid, so there's not redundancy. So again, there's some two-part components here. Our mission tonight, I believe, is to discuss, or the intent of this question specifically was that pre-purchase due diligence, Commissioner Oliver, to make sure we're looking at all that obstacles that could come up later. So any questions on roadway, we'll move on to, Jimmy, I don't know if you want to discuss specifically floodway, sewer, or just covered as just a utility.
Just a utilities type thing. So it depends on sewer, really depends on where we're looking to build. If it's in city limits or somewhere that can be worked with the city, we always have that option to be able to partner with the city to provide sewer service. We also have built our own sand filtration systems to be able to utilize our own step system, if you will. So it just truly, those are conversations that we have. I think with the Beatty project was the last big partnership that we had. There were disagreements anytime you're working with two entities along that process, but we are working with whoever we need to work with to be fair to both sides. I think it's the easiest way to put it.
Questions on number 2? Again, we can loop back if you need to, but we will move on to number 3 if not.
Yep. All right, number 3, how does RCS determine the costs associated with engineering construction fees? So first one I wanted to hit was Tennessee Code Annotated. TCA 124107 is the law that we go through for selection to be able to do an RFQ. and make sure that we are selecting architects not based on their fee structure, but based on what their qualifications are. The main architect that we have used in the past is Binkley Garcia. They are now called GMC. I think it's good to also know how effective we are with our fees. We have talked about in the past utilizing previous builds. When we utilize our previous designs, our architecture fee is 4%. That is a very competitive fee. When we utilize a new design, it's 4.75. And then if we need to, I'll use the middle school for example, we asked to move the middle school up a couple months for timeline to open for August of 26th, and that made it 5%. I think it would be favorable for the school system's standpoint to compare that to what other architect fees are, even within the county of what other architect fees are. Ours are underneath with those fees. And then it just strictly comes down to the math of what the bid comes out to. What does the bid come out to? And that's what the architect fee comes out to. The other part of that is how do you determine how much to request prior to design? This was started in January of 22 again. Previously, for commissioners that were new, and of course I wasn't in this role either, everything was brought as one package. This is how much the entire project costs. To try to get ahead and to try to utilize some of the school system's fund balance, we started bringing the design fee first so that we could go ahead and start moving a little bit quicker and also be able to utilize some of our fund balance before asking the commission for the full funding. And so if we have extra fees or extra available at the end, it goes into Fund 189. Fund 189 is one of them that I mentioned last year when we asked to move forward with the Laverne High School addition. We moved funds from another project in 189 to Laverne High Schools. So those funds stay within 189 that we then reallocate to additional projects. We have Smyrna, Riverdale, and Oakland going on right now. If there are funds available in those, then they'll be hopefully reallocated, possibly even to the Laverne High School addition to determine how much is actually needed. So I hope that answers that question. And then how are the architect fees determined again? And that truly goes back to with the RFQ and the good relationship we've had for well over probably, is it 15, 20 years, Trey, at this point? I mean, they've designed, I know that we talked in the past about not building Taj Mahals. We're building the same design and we're just sticking it on top of each other now to make it 2 stories instead.
So we approved $3.7 million last month for middle school design fees, and that prompted the question from a budget commissioner. And so on that one specifically, and I hope I have the number right, it was just a percentage of your anticipated cost of the middle school based on historical square footage numbers. Okay. So when y'all come and ask for a design fee, it has a basis in historical numbers that you've seen before, both design fee and cost per square foot.
Yep. Okay. And usually there's not any extra in the design fee. It all gets built into that entire project cost. So.
And again, those funds are redistributed if they're not consumed. The 3.7 is accounted.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And Mike may be here in a minute. We may get into some of that.
And any time that we need to move those funds, it comes back before the commission to ask to move those to a different project.
Question on fees or architects. And take note of the reusing designs brings down the fee, and that's been a practice y'all use when you can. I heard you say you had to move a project up. There's probably a premium to pay for an architect firm to drop something to move you up.
Of a percent, which I feel like was
Quarter?
very fair. Yep, very fair.
And a new building, the 2-story building for a middle school is a new design, so that
It was
exceeded the 4%.
Yes. Yeah, so that's why it was 5%. It was 0.75% for the new design and 0.25% to move it up several months.
Quick question relative to engineering and architecture. What are you all doing, if anything, to ensure that maybe there's no relationship between the firms and board members?
With our architect group, they all have a conflict of interest that they have to sign every single year as an elected official. And so if there's something that we find out, then that will go through an ethics complaint.
All right, number 4.
All right, number 4, heard questions from constituents about building cheaper buildings. What does RCS consider when designing buildings? I think that is a great question. Some of the things that we are always looking is we want to make sure that we are building buildings that are going to last. So there was a lot of conversation, and again, 2 of the charter schools are ours, so no disrespect to them. But when you are building a school that your contract only is for 10 years, if we were the ones advising them, I wouldn't advise them to build a brick and mortar building. Their contract is only for 10 years. They very well could lose money. We, on the other hand, are statutorily required to have a school system. Our buildings we build and maintain very well. The other thing, when you're looking at borrowing money and making sure that we're utilizing taxpayer funding, we want to make sure that our bond doesn't outlive our building. That would be like borrowing money for a car, and then you constantly lose money in your car because you're trading it in all the time.
Say that again. Your bond, say that again.
Yeah,
That sounded good.
Well, then I can say it as well again now, just kind of rolled. We want our bonds to now you've got me confused. Buildings to last longer than our bonds.
That's just
Yes.
a great frame of reference.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah, we want our buildings to last much longer than our bonds,
Yeah.
hopefully 2.5, 3, 4 times as much.
Awesome.
We don't want to build a 15-year building that the bond's a 20-year bond, and we have so much built up in maintenance by the time that 15 or 20-year building needs to have its sheet metal replaced or whatever it needs. We want it to be brick and mortar to last. And then we send it out for bid. We have multiple bidders. The bidding process has been much more competitive. Other school systems are slowing down a little bit in growth. I know Williamson County last year stopped some of their project bidding, so that has helped us get extra bidders in line. And I was very impressed with our Laverne High School bids. All came within, Trey, what percent of each other did they come within? Within 1%. It was just several $100,000 difference between our bidders. And so that let me know we were well within where we needed to be and being very competitive, to where I'm glad that Oakland and Riverdale got started, but I think that at the same time, some of those bidders were able to use each other against us during that time period, and that did not happen this time.
On the schools, did that conclude that train of thought? Square foot prices, do y'all compare your square foot prices historically
All the time.
to other counties?
Yes. Yeah. I'd have to go back and look and see. I presented that to Health and Ed, I believe, back in last November, December, with a similar question. Wilson County had just opened an elementary, and it was compared to what our new Beatty Elementary design was going to be. I know for Laverne High School, it's 360. Trey sent that to me earlier. Let me tell you. Of course, that'd be off the internet now.
The price per foot?
$364.30, which we were talking with the high school additions. This is much below what Riverdale and Oakland were, which I think that's to understand. One, you're in the city limits of Murfreesboro, but 2, you also had a lot of utilities we had to, and it was a tougher project. This project is almost a mirror of Smyrna High School, which it has basically it's a little bit harder terrain if you've been to Laverne High School and seeing just the way that parking lot and hill kind of slopes. It's more than Smyrna High School's does. But over the year and a half to almost 2 years since we have had this project out for bid, it has not gone up much more than you would look at as far as inflation. And so comparatively to Riverdale, Oakland being in the 50 and 60 million, Smyrna being in the 30s, and this one is right at like 40 plus your design fees and those. So the other question kind of connected to that was, why don't you just build a new building? In discussing Laverne High School's addition, it's never been, do we just get the addition to solve the new building problem? We need both. Laverne, Stewart's Creek, Smyrna, even with Smyrna's addition, they're overcrowded. Smyrna will be in a better spot, but Laverne and Stewart's Creek are overcrowded. Laverne needs the addition to deal with their current students. We need the new high school to deal with the current and the future growth, so it's not one or the other. That also gets to the cost. This cost is roughly $40 million, and being asked to fund for us to build a new high school to serve 2,500 students would be about $200 million. This project is $40 million to add roughly 500 seats. So proportionally, it is very similar to building a new building, if not just about the same.
When we're talking price per square foot, for the elementary school, does that price per foot that the bond we pull and then we just do a quick price per foot, does that include the parking lots? Or if Beatty Elementary, Poplar Hill had
yes.
Parking lot, it had a stub street, it had a couple of turn lanes, are those incorporated in the price per square foot?
After Trey comes up.
Yeah, is that incorporated in the bonding? Hello, Mr. Lee.
I think your question is, does the bond, when we borrow, include the infrastructure upgrade?
Correct.
Yes, sir. There's two ways to look at these
In ball
numbers.
fields or whatever you build with a school, I just want to make sure we're talking about price per square foot. A $64 million elementary school at X number of square feet also had parking lot and turn lanes that were compelled by virtue of its particular location, and you may have had some ball fields in that. I just don't recall at the moment. But
Yes, sir. We typically, when we talk square footage, we're looking at construction cost. If you want the development cost per square foot, then you would include your soft cost, which is your FF&E, and your design fees. Construction cost does include all infrastructure, all roads, all parking lots, all sewer, all water. All of that is completely included, even the road upgrades that we had for the turning lanes and the things at Baker and Blackman. Those things are included in our per square foot construction cost. That's an all-inclusive number. Your soft cost, which is the desks, the furniture, the books, the design fees, those types of things are not included in that. From time to time, we can't. I keep well, I guess it's 15 years now. I still call it the 10-year report. I have every construction square footage, every FF&E, everything that since I've been with the county school system. And basically, our construction cost is a bell curve. And you can extrapolate what I do when we start this process, and I look at it every year before the board begins to look at their 5-year plan. I update all of our numbers. And the reason being is we have inflation, we have other things that come into play, so those numbers escalate over time. They do not need to be unrealistic, but they need to be current with where we are in the market. The other thing that we do, and I'm probably more information than you wanted, there's a large number of contractors that are in this business. There's a number of architects that are in this business. Over the years, we've developed relationships with those people. They build schools in surrounding counties. They see those things. They constantly provide me with new data. So when I update our budget at the end of this year, where last year we were using $350 a square foot for new construction price budgeting, this year it's probably going to be $375 to $400. But all of those numbers are basically relative to our market and our market only. It's the Murfreesboro, Wilson, Davidson, Sumner, Williamson, Murray, the counties that are around us that are building schools. That's where we get our budgeting numbers, and that's what we compare ourselves to as far as cost.
Thanks, Trey. Any questions on number 4?
That is efficiency right there, sir. Wow. Number 5.
Yes, number 5.
This
So
is efficiency. Thank you, Mr. Lee.
All these questions prompted me to drop in number 5, like we're talking Laverne expansion, et cetera. How many portables are out there, and does this help relieve it when we're building additions?
So how many portables are currently being utilized? Right now, we have 73 singles and 53 doubles. So 73 single portables, 53 double, which those are 2 classrooms. So a total of 179 actual classroom spaces. When you're looking at the just total number of portables, we're at 126.
Doubles are 2 classrooms.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Does I think you had an amendment, you purchased a few of those a couple years ago. You purchased
Did a
10 of
couple
them?
years ago,
2
correct.
years ago?
Yes.
Do these expansions help reduce those, or
They do.
are they timely enough to?
They do. Where we, of course, are looking at, in the past, we've unfortunately, we'd open an addition, we move them somewhere else. And so we're starting to get to where we have a little bit extra, so that we can hopefully get rid of some of ours that are 30 and 40 years old and not put a roof on them for the third time. When they're been there that long, they're not portable anymore. They're a permanent structure.
Mr. Wilson?
Thank you, Chairman. We're just having such a great comprehensive conversation. To put this in perspective, how many classrooms are in our typical elementary, middle, and high school? Because now we're looking at a picture of how many schools does the amount of portables classrooms represent?
Middle school, you're looking close to 60.
60, 85, 40. You want to get a high
Yeah.
school that's up to 25.
2 schools.
So we're saying about 2 schools is what we have currently. We have 2 portable schools as part of our 51 schools. We've got 2 portables. It's good perspective to have, because moving forward, that number's only going to continue growing. If we don't have brick and mortar, we're going to have to keep buying portables, because we have to put the kids in one or the other.
Thank you for that observation. Y'all, question number 6 did not, Mr. Boyd.
Yes, I had a constituent ask me a question today about homeschool children. He had heard that some kind of hybrid maybe coming down the road where they're homeschooled, then they go to school for a few days, because the homeschool, I mean, I'm just asking, they're not doing very well. Trying to get them in the school system where they can get.
That is as a director of schools, a huge concern. One of my best friends homeschools their kids, and I hate to say this, my brother, it's a horrible thing to say as a director of a public school system. My brother homeschools his child as well, not in this state or this county. But I've got to clarify that. But from a logistical standpoint, we are very much, rightfully so, in a parents' rights era, and there was a push last legislative session to allow homeschool students to come to school for classes as parents would sign them up. That is a terrifying thing for me from a logistics standpoint, from accountability of student safety of kids coming and going all day long, from how do I know how many teachers to where do I put even more students. There's a lot of issues, and I don't know how big the homeschool community is involved. They're a very strong community. I don't know how much they support it. But
Where does the money flow?
I have absolutely no clue. No clue. The only area that it is required, and I think this is a good requirement, JROTC, so our Junior Ranger and Army, has to, as a federal law, they have to be included in the school for homeschool. So we have just a handful of students district-wide that for JROTC, they're homeschooled, but they come and compete and those things. Of course, you can compete after school with athletics. JROTC is the only one that is during the school day. We do not allow band or any of those type of things. So, great question.
Hooch.
Roughly how much does a portable cost?
At 100.
Food and setup.
160? Has it gone up? Okay, so 180. So 180, 185?
We were budgeting 195. That's set up.
Okay, is that a single or a double?
Mike, Trey.
Yep.
I'm sorry. It was 180,000 last year, year before last when we bought some. Typically, your electrical, depending on where, if it's a school that already has portables and I'm able to place it near a existing portable, it's around 8,000 for electrical service. If it's a new service, it's more like 12. So typically, we budget around 200 now. Now, I haven't done an RFP this year because I was surely hoping we didn't have to buy any, that we were going to have timing and we were going to be able to move some around. But on average, set up, ready to go, if I was budgeting, it'd be 200.
Okay, so a double is anywhere from $180,000 to $200,000.
Yes, sir.
I can remember when I first got on the commission, it was $40,000.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And that number comes from the RFP. We did one last year. Our board requested for an RFP for that and an RFP to be custom built, and they were both astronomical.
Question number 6, I'm going to read this, and I'll hand it over to our secretary to make sure it's in the minutes. Forgive me for not getting it. I could have just at least printed this for you, so sorry about that. But question number 6, presented by the chairman of steering committee. What is the procedure of requests for proposals and awarding capital projects such as maintenance contracts? Why is this not given to the purchasing committee of the county commission for an added layer of transparency? They want to read it again, or okay?
Yeah, I've got it.
Repeat the question, please. So you.
Well, then I'll need that. Yeah. All right. Question is, what is the procedure of RFP requests and awarding capital projects such as maintenance contracts? Why is this not given to the purchasing committee of the county commission for an added layer of transparency? So ultimately, that comes down to our private act. Our private act sets up our individual departments, such as the school system, highway department, to have their own purchasing committee. This is a question that, from my understanding, comes up multiple times per year, that just is constantly there, that, in no disrespect whatsoever, we are always transparent in anything and everything that we do. Our bids are published. We follow the exact same Tennessee Code annotated, same comptroller guidelines that we do for any and every department. A concern that I would have, of course, the commission always has that option to consolidate purchasing by changing their private act. I do have a concern of what that would do as far as timelines, when that information could be requested at any time. You also have the concern of our school board is elected officials, and while we're not involved with funding, we approve bids and RFPs and RFQs every 2 weeks. So we are actively involved with this. The other part's just the sheer size and volume. So I asked our purchasing director today, who has been with our county for many, many, many years. Many of you know her father was a county commissioner. I believe Mr. Jernigan was her father, who was on the commission for many, many, many years. Yeah, Joe Frank Jernigan's her father. So she understands the aspect of the county school system, the purchasing rules and laws, and how to make that relationship work. And I trust Joanne when it comes to our bids and processes. The other part is the number. So just as an example, last year we did 78 bids and RFQs in 23-24 alone. And so we have our entire own bid opening process. Even when I go to the bid openings, I have to sign in. Even though I'm an employee and sit in that building, I have to sign in because I'm there for the bid openings, even though I've been there. So I know that's a little bit, it's a question that, it's not a turf question. I just am confident in what we're doing. We're happy to provide any information that is needed or requested, but I do feel that we're transparent when those processes, there's anything I can attest to, Joanne is not going to, or our purchasing department under Mr. Runny is not going to pick and choose favorites. They're going to go with whoever the RFQ or RFP or the bid process decides. A lot of our bids are mainly off state contract.
Thank you, Director. Anybody need to loop back to any of the 6 questions, or Chairman Phillips? You can wrap us up on this if you wish. I was going to ask you to do that anyway.
Dr. Sullivan, let me just say that building expensive schools end up being more inexpensive in the long run. Commissioner Boyd and I have had those conversations over the last couple of years a number of times. The perfect example was Siegel and Antioch High School were built in almost the exact same time frame. I challenged the school board because Antioch was built considerably less than we built Siegel, and the answer was, go look at that school, look at our school, and I did. And from that point on, I've never challenged the longevity of the schools that we're building. Look at Riverdale, look at Oakland, look at Smyrna High School. They're 65 years old. and still going strong. So the metal buildings may not last 25 or 30 years, but the buildings that we're building will be much, much cheaper in the long run for us to continue to do that process. Don't get me wrong, I don't like building a $200 million school, but if that's what we have to do, that's what we have to do. So, and I wanted to kind of go back to the infrastructures. I'm not sure I understood exactly what you said, but I think I understood that it is, infrastructure is part of the cost of building that school. We went through that process 10, 12 years ago, and the commission that was seated at that time, which this commissioner was on this committee back at that time, and said, I'll never approve another school without the infrastructure plan being in place. Those are part of the cost of construction, just like building any type of neighborhood may be. So we have to consider that, and we'll never lose sight of that, never. So that's good. Let me just ask a question. Way back when, and I mean this, way back when, before some of you guys were probably even born, the high schools that we built were in a classification. Some of them could have been considered a vocational high school. Have we gotten away from that?
Talking about from codes and building standpoint, or
No.
as far as building?
Riverdale was considered a vocational high school, not a comprehensive high school.
We build our vocational programs into our comprehensive high schools. But we also realize that from a cost perspective, something that we have talked about multiple times and will continue to talk about is the ability to, instead of replicating, for example, mechatronics at Oakland, we haven't replicated that. So kids only that go to Oakland can go to the mechatronics. Same thing for when you were looking at Laverne High School's welding program right now. Only kids zoned to Laverne can go for that welding program. Those are high-cost programs that we can't replicate at every building. And so we've, without any true success yet, investigated trying to have our own CTE centers that would hopefully be able to lower some of the cost of us building those CTE vocational portions into our comprehensive high schools and putting them in a center. We just have so many other needs. It hasn't been an area we've been able to make progress on yet.
Maybe one other question as it relates to building for the future. And there were a lot of questions that were asked and answers that were given. Looking long-term, a fast growth county such as Rutherford County, and how we've grown since the late 1960s and 1970s, we're in a similar position that a city like Detroit was 75 years ago. And we're 60 to 65 years into that process. Are you considering what may happen to Rutherford County and the population of Rutherford County if some of our industry that's old now, Firestone, Bridgestone, Nissan, Pillsbury, Rich Products, Heritage Farms, Taylor Farms, some of these places will, in essence, no longer exist. Are you...
Single day, it's a concern.
Are you looking, as far as planning for the future, doing work with the Chamber of Commerce to make sure that they're looking after our current industries?
They always are, and I sit on their executive council for Rutherford Works. Truth be told, I have not been involved since May. I just haven't. With everything that happened, I have not been involved with the executive council since May. But we have a meeting upcoming the next couple weeks. And then I think it was great at Laverne High School's welding, ribbon cutting, the number of industry partners that were there. I've been to, of course, many school openings, addition openings. I've never seen us have to go, all right, our industry partners and the principal have to say, all right, just show me hands and tell me who all you are, because there were that many industry partners there. And so, yes, sir, it is a constant. If we aren't providing a workforce for our community, then ultimately the community and industry starts to leave, your students and your parents start to leave, poverty takes over, and you're like a school system that we don't want to be.
And the last question, 10 years ago, it cost $3 million to operate a high school. What's that cost today?
I'd have to go and look and see. It is, from a staffing standpoint, I don't know, I have to go and calculate that. It's a lot more than $3 million, I can tell you that. It is high just from a operational electricity, water, insurance, staffing, it's more than that.
Thank you, Chairman.
Just a comment, a couple of comments and one question relative to sustaining growth. I think that's one of the challenges that I've heard from constituents when they talk about that whole funding mechanism that's supposed to assist us, is how are we going to ensure that we're going to continue to grow? So that's definitely something that, we have to kind of look at. But my question reverts back to CTE and students that may be interested in programs that may not be offered at their zone schools. Now, is there any exception if a parent provides transportation, their own transportation, for a student to be able to enroll in a program of interest if it's not at their zone school?
Great question. With the state law change with zoning in 2021, any open seat has to be published for lottery. And so there used to be the school board could approve zone exemptions. That was all removed with the new state law change. We are hoping, and it'll be a full proposal, we talked about it at our retreat, a full board proposal to vote on. So this is not official, and it's not a lot, but to open up 10 seats for lottery for each high school. Again, we would much rather do more so that they could go, but that is more than we offer right now. And so that is at least a step towards students being able to go to a school that may not be zoned for. In a perfect world, I would love that. We are just too overcrowded to be able to offer that. And that's a hard argument. We're like, the parent says, I'd provide transportation. I'm sorry, it's not something we're allowed to do. So,
especially with dual enrollment and all that's offered, that can really put students ahead once they graduate,
Tough, yeah.
Yes,
So,
Commissioner Davidson.
Can I add to that I had a parent speak to me, and I actually sent an email to Dr. Sullivan. He could not go to school and have lunch with his child and wasn't sure why, and we, contacted the principal. They were so full that they did not have room for parents. So this year, thankfully, we've moved, some children around with the rezoning, and I was able to let him know that the principal is going to open it up, and you can kind of RSVP, and so now our parents are allowed to go into these elementary schools to eat with their kids again. That's how crowded we were in Laverne.
And CTE is on our agenda tonight with an amendment, and
Correct.
I know in conversations, I know Chair Maxwell and the current Board of Education is I think getting ready to pour more energy and funding, even some voluntary funding and fundraising funds into CTE. So I know, Commissioner Oliver, you and I both just know how important CTE is. So I'm glad you brought that up, and we'll look at that in a moment as well. So that, without any other additions, that concludes the question part. Phil?
Thank you, Chairman. Just one final comment after hearing the chairman's comments back here. Just a message of hope. We sit around and talk about the funding challenges and how we can't see 5 years into the future how we're going to be able to fund what we need. Those things are true. But we are working day by day to keep on schedule with what the needs of this community are. This commission, these committees, and I'm proud to be a part of what's going on in Rutherford County because it's all been mentioned tonight. Looking at CTE programs and vocational, the welding program on Laverne is fantastic. If you could have seen the hope and the joy on these students' faces at Laverne, and you're right, the industry partners that were there to assist these kids can't wait for them to join their businesses. They just kept raising their hands. We are on the path to something great, everybody. We work hard and we sit here and we have challenges and we're constantly working on what's wrong. But I'm telling you, as a community, the Rutherford County Chamber, Rutherford Works, what's going on with Rutherford County's Chamber and education is absolutely stunning and outstanding. Greg Jones and those guys don't get enough credit for what they're doing. It's outrageous, the accomplishments that are going on for our students. We don't talk about that here because we're a funding body, so we're talking about how to pay for the things in the future. But I just want to give hope and excitement that we're making a difference. And Rutherford County, with all of its growth, man, there's some awesome things going on. And everyone should feel proud, and that is what keeps fueling us to keep hitting this head on. Come together as a school board, come together as committees and commission, come together with the municipalities, work together with our Chamber of Commerce, and ultimately include the state in trying to all work together to make things better. And guys, we're making a difference. It's happening. So I just want to point out, thank you for all the comments tonight, because I think we're heading in a great direction when it would be easy to just be fearful of the future. I feel like we're heading into the future very well. Very well. And thank you for saying it's taxpayer-funded projects. This is all taxpayer money. It's not our money. It doesn't belong to the school board. It doesn't belong to Rutherford County government. It's taxpayer money. It's my money. It's your money. So we're spending their money. And the second one, thank you for saying, I think you were mentioning, 60-year high schools. Thank you for mentioning making a payment well beyond the usefulness of the purchase is very irresponsible. So what a wonderful way to put it. We're building things that we're going to have 3-4 times the span of what it took to pay for it. That's fiscal responsibility. And thank you for thinking that way. If we keep thinking of taxpayers first, working together, tonight's been the most comprehensive presentation I've ever heard of how everybody's working together to make this work. So thank you for taking the time to do that, and for the contributions of all the commission members for putting together these questions. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. At the chair's prerogative, we're going to take a couple of minutes and then transition into budget amendments. We're going to take a little break. I'd like to call the Health and Ed back into session. Looks like we are now live again. So thank you, school board, for taking those questions and for spending that time. We felt it's critical to try to address these large item questions. We're getting good questions from budget. We realize that we're going to be talking about moving some money tonight. So we wanted those questions to kind of preamble the next ask for the 5-year plan that we've been anticipating, that is Laverne High School Edition. And then we'll move on with a couple of grant expenditures. So thank you, School Board, Chair Maxwell, thank you for attending. Trey Lee, thank you as well. Dr. Sullivan.
All right, first one we have is request for Laverne High School. This is Annex Bid 3766. On Thursday, September 26, 2024, Purchasing, Engineering, and Construction received bids for the site work and construction of the annex for Laverne High. All bids have been reviewed, and Engineering and Construction recommends Robert S. Biskin and Company, $36,340,000 base bid plus alternate number 1 of $90,000 for a total bid of $36,430,000. Engineering recommends the motion to approve. Our breakdown is construction, $36,430,000. Construction-related cost is $2 million. Furniture, fixtures, and equipment is $3 million. Design is $2.5 million. That has already been funded, just as a note, through fund balance. And then the total request is $43,930,000.
Vice Chair Wilson, I will cede to you if you want Michael Smith, or I know we may have multiple questions here, but I felt like you've been really watching this closely. If I'll let you open the floor of discussion on this request.
Yes, Chairman, thank you. If Financial Director Michael Smith would be able to come up just for a moment. One of the big questions I want to make sure we're having is, how do we pay for it? What's the plan? So let's go ahead and have that discussion. And there's been ongoing discussion for more than a year for this day to come on different ideas. And of course, as we get closer to the dates, we have even better planning. So the financial department is constantly coming up with what's the best scenario, best plan moving forward. It's updated constantly. So I'd like to hear from Director Smith on some of the current ideas on funding. Also, I think it's best that we have the conversation to include the fact that in April, we are projected to have an ask for a middle school. So if the comments could include not only this ask, but maybe how they look in the bigger picture of this particular budget year, on how that works, funding the middle school request coming in addition to this, that would be great to hear some discussion on that.
So we have no money, sorry. No, I'm kidding. So a couple options here. If this body wishes to forward this on to budget and to the commission, I'll give you a recommendation tonight. I'll give the same, probably more detailed recommendation at budget next week. But my recommendation tonight would be to fund this through a future bond issuance, to not actually borrow any money at this time for that. And that's going to lead into the middle school that I think the school board has stated they're going to come and ask for during the March, April, May timeframe. I'm giving that big time frame because there's a lot of unknowns. That's also during when we're fixing to have the joint, they're going to present their budget, we're going to look at our budget, that type of thing. So my recommendation would be, if you wish to approve this tonight, would be to fund this a little over $41 million is technically their request tonight for a future bond issuance. For the minutes for Carla, I believe that's going to be $41,430,000 to be funded for the future bond issuance. Now, I will also tell you, y'all, this body and budgeting commission can direct me to borrow today, go straight to the bond market now. The reason I would advise against that is because right now, with the way interest rates are, we have some issues with arbitrage. We'd like to avoid those. The other thing would be, you've got Oakland, Riverdale, and Smyrna that are, a good chunk of the way through. In talking with the schools and talking with Trey, there's a chance, there could be some money left over. Could be 200,000, it could be $1 million, who knows what that'll be at that time. But, I don't want to borrow an extra $1 million if we don't have to, because that funding from those 3 schools could shift. And so right now, I think we have enough cash flow to get this project started. I will tell you that in an emergency scenario, if there would be a bunch of pay apps that come through, this body can always issue a bond anticipation note, as we've done in the past. We did that with the 3 high school additions. I don't think that's necessary at this time. So those are kind of the 3 options, but just to reiterate my recommendation, if you wish to move forward, and I'm not advocating one way or the other, but if you wish to move forward, I think my recommendation would be to fund this through a future bond issuance. And then that would allow the number they've kind of thrown at me for the middle school, I want to say it's like 80-ish million. So that'd put us, and I'm using round numbers here, put you around $120 million borrowing in the spring. And so that way we would tackle that kind of at one time as we look at the budget process, as far as setting a tax rate. We could look at all of that as one piece. The other thing you're going to see, and I'm going to briefly touch on this, I'll answer questions tonight to anybody in this committee for sure. But we're also looking at doing a refunding in November. So you're going to see that at budget and then at full commission. So we're kind of looking at that as a whole, or my office is kind of looking at it as a holistic approach to what's our debt look like in general, not just with schools. And so that played into my recommendation as far as to fund through a future bond issuance if you wish to move forward. I hope that all made sense.
I have a question. You prefaced your comments by saying you'd give a more detailed report to budget. So what would you tell them that you're not telling us?
No, it's not that. I'll have some charts and stuff there as far as part of that refunding. And I can touch on the 50,000-foot view without me having all of that in front of us. So part of a refunding is we submit a report to the comptroller's office. That just came back yesterday. We have to analyze those numbers of what those future savings would be. The bond market changes. The bond market was not good last week. It got a little better today, those types of things. So I would look at the actual savings of that debt and be able to tell you, have those numbers in front of me. I just don't have those tonight. The other thing I would tell you is the holistic debt approach, and I'll touch on it just because I don't have it in front of me. One of the things I'm constantly looking at, and was touched on tonight, is what does our debt look like 5, 10, 20 years from now, right? And so one of the things with this refunding that'll be coming up is we may do something we did something we haven't done in a long time, if ever, last refunding in the spring. which we refunded debt, and instead of borrowing 20 years on that elementary school, we borrowed 10. Great for the county, we were able to do that. The other thing that we're looking at is maybe calling some of our bonds, and so I'll talk a little more in detail about that. So it's not that I didn't want to share that with you, it's just that's very fluid. And so I had a phone call today with our bond advisors as we're kind of looking through that. I just don't have that prepared yet. But ultimately that led to my recommendation of looking at that $120 million with the elementary and a potential middle, trying to give this body and the commission as much options as they can, with trying to really limit our debt, to keep it under 10 years if I can, the majority of our debt. And we may not always be able to do that, but I would like to. And so with that refunding, I mean, there's a chance we could save anywhere from $1 million to $2 million. And so that plays into freeing up capacity. Because ultimately the goal, right, is to be the most efficient we can with the taxpayers' dollars and not to have to raise taxes, right? And so ultimately that's the 50,000-foot view. And so like I said, I'll be glad to give the same detailed numbers that I would give at budget at commission the following Thursday, because I'll have that all that ready. That schedules will be back from the comptroller's office. We just got those back. I'll be able to review those, be able to explain how much we're going to save on the refunding or potential. That would be in December. That's what I was saying. It's an option for this body, for the commission, to direct me to borrow this $41 million, but there's some other consequences I think that would come from that. And so that's why I recommend the future. I hope that answers your question.
Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman. That's an excellent plan, and please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to try to summarize really high level here. We're looking at around the March-April time as we get closer. We're going to have different numbers, more budgets come in. We can decide the best move at that time. So obviously anything we would need funded before, we've done anticipation loans before, we could do that again. So we have a plan. We've done this before. I think this is a very wise move. This is to try to have the best positioning, more information 4 or 5 months from now, and decide what the best way to use taxpayer funds is. I think that's a great plan. I understand it. I think you explained that well. We'll figure it out at that point when they ask where to come and what the final numbers are. We'll figure out what the best way to use it is. It looks like the pathway here obviously is to use revenue without raising property tax, which is always what we're trying to do. And I'd like to add too, we'll be a few more months in too to seeing what the new adequate facilities tax increase might bring. So we'll have different numbers and metrics and things to look at to find the best path forward. Thank you. That's a wonderful, perfect answer on a plan that budget can ultimately decide how to proceed with. Thank you for that.
And Commissioner, I'll add, hopefully Friday I'll have a lot of that stuff on the SharePoint for the refunding documents, so that even anybody, even the public, can look at that and see what the projected savings are. So if anybody has any questions even before budget, once you see that, I'd be glad to chat with you, talk with you in detail. I don't want anybody to think it's not that I wasn't willing to share that tonight. It's just that they're not ready. So.
And Chairman, I'd like to add the expertise that we have. Sorry about that.
Were you?
I was going to make a motion, but if he's getting ready to have some comments, that's fine.
Yeah, just had one comment, was the amount of expertise it takes to do a refunding. I just want to make sure that I'd say for Director Michael Smith, not all counties in Tennessee are able to even consider the pathway of saving money through refunding. That's something we don't bring up. It needs to be said publicly. So I'm just saying Director Smith does a great job saving millions of dollars by being able to understand how to do refunding on bonds.
Well said.
It's important to say it.
Commissioner Oliver, you have.
I was just going to make a motion to accept this request for the Laverne High School Annex.
Second.
We have a proper motion and second. Any further discussion, Mr. Wilson?
I would just like to add to it, would it be best to be specific with the actual numbers of what we're forwarding to budget?
If this is going to help me at budget, since we'll put it, can I clarify your motion, Commissioner Oliver? If you're okay with this, maybe the motion can be to forward the request for the Laverne High School addition to the Budget and Finance Committee, with that request including $41,430,000 to be funded through a future bond issuance.
Sure, I can do that. That's kind of like what I wrote down. So, absolutely, I would rescind my motion and make a new motion, as stated by Director Smith, to accept the request for the Laverne Annex and pass it on to budget with the proposed numbers for future funding.
We
Bond
captured
issue.
that.
Is that correct? Is that good enough?
Second.
Very good, thank you. Any further discussion? Carla, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Davidson,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Oliver,
Aye.
Commissioner Boyd,
Yes.
Commissioner McMurray,
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch,
Yes.
Chairman Dodd.
Yes.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, Commissioner, for making that motion and the clarity, Mike. Just one point, Mike, you consult, does the school board consult with you and you with them to look back at what we've bonded in previous years? And do you project, say again, you do indeed project the school's anticipated upcoming activity per the 5-year plan? Do you look at that when you're 5 and 10, 20 years down the road? Repeat that.
Yes. Also, that 5-year plan, plus the county's, and we have a unofficial plan that we look at. That's required during our bond rating agency call, actually. So when we have our phone calls to the bond rating agencies, one of the things they look at, amongst a lot of things, is what's your anticipated future borrowing needs, right? And so for us, we're very blessed here in Rutherford County that we only have to borrow for large capital projects. Some small counties have to borrow for a fire truck. You know, thankfully, we're not in that situation. But yes, we look at their 5-year plan. Sometimes they don't enjoy me trying to suggest moving it, but we talk, at least once a month, if not more. But especially during this time of year and during budget season, we talk constantly about that.
Thank you, Mike. Next item, Dr. Sullivan.
Just want to say thank you to this commission for forwarding on for this body. Second, we have a Fund 141 fund balance amendment. This amendment increases budgeted fiscal year 24-25 Fund 141 revenue and expenditures to recognize the carryover amounts of the state-funded public school security grant and the innovative model school grant. The funds for the public school security grant will be used to provide Raptor event management license and software, the purchase of radios, repeaters, radio software, and bullet-resistant film. Carryover amount of this grant totals $905,496.68. The monies for the Innovative Schools Model Grant will be used to provide 75% salary payment to existing CTE personnel, stipends for project-based learning works training, vehicle and equipment purchases for various CTE activities, and construction and renovations to CTE buildings and structures at multiple schools. The carryover of this grant is $14,162,446. Both grants have already been approved by the State Department of Education. No local matches are required for either grant. We discussed the salary portion. That's something we always look at anytime there is a non-recurring grant with salary. We had the same question and discussion last year. CTE, with this funding, the new TISA funding format allows you to, or provides you new funding for outcomes if you get certain industry certifications. So we are taking a couple-year approach to see if we can get industry certifications to actually fund enough to pay for these positions. If something happens, just as we mentioned last year, that it doesn't, then these programs will fall off and we won't fund these positions any longer.
I want to reiterate the salary component. That was the first red flag I saw. Grant money going towards recurring expenses. So I challenged Dr. Sullivan on that last week. He came back with this response. He, I think, added a little bit to it last time, that they reevaluate these CTE positions, and if they need to transition out, they'll do so. So it's incumbent upon us to ask those kind of questions. So thank you for anticipating that. And
Give a great example. I know we've talked about 2 different times, but it's the Laverne Welding program. That was a mechanical engineering and plumbing program 3 years ago that we couldn't find the right teacher for, the right seats, that we ended up transitioning because that program wasn't doing what it needed to do.
So we've heard the school board's recitation of the motion. I will entertain a motion from this body. Any questions?
I'll move to approve the Fund 141 General Purpose School Budget to include the grant carryover money as presented.
Any further discussion?
Yes, I have a question. What is our rate of, I guess, passing as it relates to these certification tests that the CTE students take? What are we looking like?
Each one is different, and so I can get you a report for next week on what each industry certification actually is. I can tell you our statewide, so when you're talking about CTE, it also includes your, not necessarily CTE, but ACT scores, your statewide dual credit. Statewide dual credit's the hardest thing to pass. It's not really CTE, but it's connected to outcome funding. So let me get you the pass-fail rate for all of these projects for next month.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Carter, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Oliver,
Aye.
Commissioner Davidson,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Boyd,
Yes.
Commissioner McMurray,
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch,
Yes.
Chairman Dodd.
Yes. Thank you. Next item, please.
All right, next item is a fund balance request, and if you don't mind, Chairman Dodd, once I read it, then I'd like to give a little explanation of why we're requesting for fund balance. This is a Fund 141 fund balance amendment. This amendment is to fund the purchase of radios, equipment, and service for Mobile Communications America for all Rutherford County schools. This project will be funded by amending General Purpose Fund 141 by decreasing 39,000 unassigned fund balance and increasing expenditure account 72,610,399, operation of plant, other contracted services, and 72,610,720, operation of plant operation equipment in the amount of $2,015,000. Always feel like it's important to discuss anytime we talk about why are we using fund balance for this request. On May 21st of last year, the county school system was allocated from the Tennessee Department of Education $4,042,869.11 for fast growth. That number was a decrease of about $2 million from what we were told in January, which is the reason when our outcome funding we get in December and fast growth funding we never include as part of our revenue for our budget. It is fluid. We don't know until later on through the year what it's going to be. Our final budget expenditure with the county commission was that $4 million amount is what we planned on. However, on July 2nd, which I think is ironic, July 2nd, after the fiscal year had already ended, we received our actual allocation, which was $6.8 million. And so it was $2.8 million over what we expected. We have a huge need for our radios with safety. I don't want to go into all the specifics and the radios with the county and all those different type of concerns have been going over for several years. But we have dead spots in our schools where repeaters haven't worked, old walkies. We do not have telephones in every classroom, so it is a communication and a safety issue. We've been addressing this part through the grant. So you saw in the previous amendment had part of our radios. This is the other part. So this puts 30, we talked to our school principals, puts 30 radios in each building at the elementary level, 40 to 50 at middle and high school, and allows us to have our own infrastructure for our radios like we currently do, but they're analog, not digital, and they are just not holding up to the way that they need to. So I felt like it was important. I gave you the caveat. This was not original local taxpayer funds that we are asking to take out of fund balance. This was additional revenue from the state, and I know it gets mixed in together. It could be the argument, but that's truly where our intent was this was extra funding given to the state after the fiscal year ended, and this is a huge need for us.
Does this combine, these monies combined, do they take care of the problem, or do you still have an outstanding?
They will take care of, and it's not the bare minimum is not the right word. It is an adequate supply of walkies. I know that our teachers wish they all could have a walkie. From a logistics standpoint, I don't think we need all of our teachers to have a walkie. There's protocols and things you need in place in a school building. But this does give us a repeater in every single building. It has a service contract for replacement and repair of our walkies, and it gives us those walkies to be able to communicate even within zones of our schools. Great question.
Any questions or I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion on the motion for radios from fund balance? Call the roll, please.
Sir. Commissioner Oliver?
Aye.
Commissioner Davidson? Yes. Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Boyd?
Yes.
Commissioner McMurray?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Chairman Dodd?
Yes.
Thank you.
Runyon, Dr. Sullivan, I think that concludes. Any parting remarks?
I just want to thank you all. I know there's a lot of tough conversations, but we have a great relationship, and I think together we've been able to accomplish amazing things over the last really 26, 27 months. So I know that goes sometimes without saying, but I never want to take an opportunity to miss it, and appreciate Michael Smith. We talk constantly about just about everything you could ever imagine, so I appreciate his work as well. So thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. The next item we have under other business, Chairman Phillips has asked us to look at the holiday calendar to make sure that we coordinate properly. I don't have a calendar with me. If any of y'all can help me direct this, or Carla, or Jeff, if there's a week that we need to revise to benefit your total calendar.
Chairman, what I've got from the county website is our November meeting will be, as usual, to be on the 26th. However, for December, since Christmas Eve would be on that standard time, we have the calendars moved up Health and Ed to December 17th. So it's exactly 1 week earlier. So to be on the third Tuesday for the month of December.
I see everybody consulting their calendar, so I just want to give y'all a chance. That looks compatible with your calendars. We will make that. Do we need a motion to make that move? At the 17th, very good. Okay. Is that the only date, Jeff, that you wanted to coordinate? Okay. Mr. Gooch.
Well, I guess in conclusion, I announce this with great sadness that Commissioner Davison brought Commissioner McMurray a cookie for tonight, but she didn't bring anyone else any cookies. So I think she should be censored.
I prefer you call her first. Have a phone call before we entertain a censor.
Well, she should know if you're going to bring one person a cookie and he's going to sit here and eat it in front of everybody,
he can't eat
she
it.
needs to bring everybody a cookie. Or at least me a cookie.
Okay, this is spiraling downward quickly. Ms. Oliver, give us a motion to adjourn. Somebody help me.
Motion to adjourn.